Thank you. I love the looks I got when Alexa just told everyone that I did two-a-days. Yes, so I used to be a ClassPass super user, and now I lead the conversion rate optimization program at ClassPass. I'm so happy to be here. I actually came here 2 years ago as an attendee, and I just have to say, the CXL community is so inspiring, and it's just such a great group of people, so I'm really, really excited to share our learnings from ClassPass here today. So during today's session, we're going to talk about, was your optimization truly a winner? Now, the great thing is, a lot of the presentations we've already seen have kind of touched upon this point. But really what we're going to talk about today is downfunnel data tracking. If you're not sure what that means, not to worry. We're going to talk about what downfunnel data is, as well as why it's important to track. So first, show of hands, how many of you have heard of ClassPass? Awesome. All right, cool. Well, for those of you who haven't, ClassPass is the largest studio fitness aggregator. So what exactly does that mean? Well, essentially, ClassPass provides you with the opportunity to try a variety of classes. So whether your thing is to try out boxing classes or spinning or just going to the gym, with ClassPass, you get the opportunity to try all of these different classes without having to commit to just one gym or one studio. So at ClassPass, we're not just about testing out new workouts like aqua spinning or anti-gravity running, which are super cool, by the way. But we're also, our company culture is also heavily focused on experimentation. So essentially, everyone from our customer experience team to our product, design, engineering, marketing, pricing, inventory, partnerships teams, they're all empowered to run tests. In fact, in 2018 alone, we ran over 150 optimization tests company-wide. A lot of our tests require cross-team experimentation. So what that means is that we'll usually have members from each of our different departments work together to run an experiment. As a result, we've developed an in-house testing lab. So with the testing lab, we have members of each of our different departments come together to ensure that these cross-functional tests are prioritized effectively, as well as resourced accordingly. In addition to our in-house testing lab, we've also found that with so many different tests continuously running, we want to ensure that everyone has visibility into these tests as well as the learnings. And so what we do is we have test roadmaps. So each team provides a high-level summary of the experiment, the working hypothesis, as well as the estimated impact and effort. In addition to that, once the test is concluded, they add the actual impact as a result. That way, we can continue to leverage previous learnings to continue to iterate and innovate our future tests. So now that I've given a bit of context about ClassPass and our testing infrastructure, let's start talking about metrics. So in a lot of out-of-the-box testing platforms out there, it's relatively easy to measure the impact that your optimization has on how your visitors are interacting with your website. So you can measure everything from how your optimization is impacting page views, bounce rate, click-through rate. And then as you start to invest more into your testing infrastructure, you might start to get a bit more custom with those metrics. So you might look at things like your lead capture rate, or if you have an e-commerce site, your average transaction value, or even your purchase conversion rate. So show of hands, how many of you have concluded a test based on the impact on your purchase conversion rate? All right, quite a few people, perfect. Well, today we're going to talk about taking that one step further, so you can really start to understand the long-term impact that your web optimization is having on your company. So the main takeaway here is that your primary KPI, your primary key performance indicator, is not telling the full story. So things like looking at your bounce rate and how that's impacted by your optimization, or your click-through rate, or page views, or lead captures, or purchase conversion rate. These aren't telling the full story of what happens after the fact. How is your optimization really impacting the long term for your company? And that's where downfunnel data kicks in. So with downfunnel data, you can start to see that full story. You get more visibility, and you can reach a confident conclusion to how your optimization is really impacting your business. So downfunnel data points include things like quality of leads, the duration of your sales cycle, customer acquisition costs, operational costs, and customer retention rate. So now that we've defined what are down-funnel data points, let's talk about why it's important to track those. So it really bubbles up to two main reasons. You want to see what's the impact on your growth, as well as what's the impact on costs. So to better explain this, I'm going to go over two different tests that we ran at ClassPass. One where we measured down funnel to understand the impact on growth, and the other to look at the costs. So for this first experiment, before I dive into the test details, I want to give a bit more context into the studio fitness marketplace so you can understand why we ran this particular test. So I'm going to go through a bit of an exercise here. And for those who had a late night, I think you'll appreciate this, this one. So I want you guys to take a step back, pretend you're not at CXL right now. Instead, imagine you're in bed, see? So I want you to imagine it's January 1st, 2019, New Year's Day, and you've just woken up, maybe still recovering a bit. You can probably relate right now. And I want you to imagine that you just woke up and you're thinking, new year, new day, new you. This is the year you're going to make your health and your fitness a priority. So where do you start? Well, you go to your phone and your email inbox is flooded with every type of gym promotion and deal out there. And then your friend tells you about this app that she's been using that gets into a variety of different classes with really inspirational instructors, super motivating music, and awesome studio amenities. In fact, she invites you to a hip-hop yoga class. I mean, who's heard of that? So it seems like a no-brainer. You go ahead, you go to class with her. Well, this example that I just illustrated for you guys really demonstrates why referrals is one of our strongest sources of acquisition at ClassPass. It's our members going out and spreading the word about ClassPass and its benefits and how the app works. So really, referrals serve as a high-impact opportunity for optimization for us at ClassPass. By nature, fitness classes are a social experience. It's friends inviting friends to class. Also provides a sense of accountability, so you actually show up. And also, these friends serve as pre-qualified leads for us at ClassPass because our members have already explained how the app works, what are the benefits of the membership, and therefore, we actually see in our web analytics that referrals convert at a rate 30% higher than non-referral traffic. So for this reason, we're constantly looking for ways to scale our referral program. So in this particular experiment, we wanted to answer the question, can we effectively boost referrals with incentives? So what we did was we thought, okay, so there's a couple different ways we could have run this incentivization program in terms of what we incentivized our members with when they invited their friends, as well as when we provided the incentive. In this particular experiment, we thought, what would really inspire our members to go out and spread the word about ClassPass? What do they really want? Free fitness classes. So what we did was we offered 10 free credits. Now, credits in ClassPass are a way of booking fitness classes. And classes vary in terms of credit prices depending on the studio itself, the popularity of the instructor, as well as the class time. So by offering 10 free credits, it really gives our members the ability to decide how they want to apply that reward. In addition, we decided that in terms of when we provided that incentive, well, we really wanted to inspire our members to not only spread the word about ClassPass, but ensure that their friends were actually experiencing ClassPass for themselves. So what we did was we offered the incentive after the friend had already taken a class at ClassPass. So the way we ran this experiment is a split test. 50% of our existing members did not see the incentive, but were still prompted to invite their friends upon booking a class. The other 50% did see an incentive. Now, what we saw when we ran this experiment is that invites went up by 50%. So in addition to that, in terms of how it translated into referral acquisitions, we saw a bump of 35% in referral acquisitions from this incentive. So based on these results from our testing dashboard, show of hands, how many of you would consider this incentivization program a winner? All right, yeah, quite a few people. So when we shared this with our executive team, they were ecstatic. I mean, 35% bump, that's great. When we shared this with our product and engineering, they couldn't wait to productize this. They wanted to bump this up on their roadmap ASAP. But before we move forward with it, we wanted to understand, what kind of impact did this have on our growth? So again, in Silo, when we looked at our referral program, we observed a bump pre and post experiment from the incentives. But then when we looked in aggregate, meaning not just at our referrals, but looking at our direct, our organic traffic, email, paid social, paid search, et cetera, we noticed something interesting. It was actually relatively flat. Essentially, we were seeing cross-channel cannibalization. And we were able to validate this with our web analytics. So what we were seeing is that a lot of visitors who were now being acquired through this incentive program were actually returning visitors. So we could infer from this that really our members were so inspired by this 10 free credit reward that they were reaching out to friends who maybe already were considering ClassPass, but they were ensuring that they were signing up with their invitation URL so that our members could get that credit. So by being able to track this down funnel, we were able to actually avoid unintentionally and inefficiently redistributing our acquisition strategy. Now, that's not to say that this isn't a total failure. You learn from every test, and there are ways that we could tweak this so that we can see an actual positive impact in our aggregate growth. Now for the second test. The first test we talked about acquisition. This next test is talking about re-engagement. And we'll talk about how we tracked it down funnel so we could look at the impact on costs. So like I mentioned, this test was focused on re-engagement. So with our inactive members, our customer experience team takes a very hands-on approach to understanding what are some of the reasons that some members decide to cancel their accounts at ClassPass. In fact, what they do, our customer experience team does, is they aggregate all of that information back to our product team so that we can ensure that that's addressed in our product roadmap and that we're continuously removing points of friction and addressing concerns to better our product. As a result of this, we offer what's called a win-back offer. So this is basically a retrial period where inactive members can come back to ClassPass and try all the new classes we've added or studios, as well as new product features without having to commit just yet. So this here is a screenshot of our reactivation landing page at the time that we ran this experiment. So as you can see from the CTA, we were offering a 1-week win-back offer. And what we wanted to do was see what kind of tests could we run to re-engage more of our inactive members. So based on some of the data, we had this hypothesis that maybe if we extended the win-back offer duration, that could lift our reactivation rate. So what we did was we doubled the duration from 1 week to 2. And so 50% of our inactive members who came to the reactivation page saw the 1 week, and then the other 50%, the lucky ones, saw the 2-week offer. And we wanted to see what kind of impact did this have on our reactivation rate. So when we ran this experiment, we observed a 25% lift in our reactivations. Looks great, but how does that translate down funnel? So really what we want to answer is, with this 25% lift in our reactivations, what does that mean for the number of members who are actually retained after that win-back offer had ended, and at what cost? So this next slide here, I just want to preface, it is illustrative. Now, the deltas are what we actually observed in our experiment, but I have standardized our control group to 100 just for privacy reasons. So, so the way this experiment ran was that our control group saw the 1-week offer. So of the visitors who were enrolled in the experiment, let's say we had 100 people reactivate in the control group. Now, we observed a 25% lift in our reactivation rate, which we just went over in the last slide. So that would mean we had 125 people reactivate on the extended offer. Oops. All right, so then the next thing we want to look at is what is the total cost of goods? Meaning, how much did it cost for us to offer that 1 week or 2 week offer? So if we were to say that a 1 week offer costs about $150 per person, well, in our experiment, we observed a 30% increase in the cost of the offer because by doubling the win-back offer, this gave more opportunity to take more classes and therefore drove up the cost by 30%. So with 125 people and that 30% bump, that meant $24,000 in total cost or COGS. The next thing we want to look at is how many people were retained after the win-back offer ended. So in our control group, we had an 80% retention rate. So 80 out of those 100 people were retained. Now in our experiment, we observed a 5% retention loss, meaning that by making the offer more generous, we were actually getting lower quality reactivations as a result. So with that 5% loss, that means 95 out of the 125 people were retained. So knowing that we have 80 people retained in our control group and the total COGS is $15,000, we can deduce that our customer acquisition cost for our control group is $187.50. So we know we can get 80 people at the cost of $187. But when we extend the offer to 2 weeks, what does that mean in terms of the incremental gain in retained members and at what cost? So essentially what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how much did those 15 additional members cost us to get. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to take the difference of the total cost of goods between the extended offer and the control and divide that by the 15 additional members. And that gets us $625. Now what we want to do is we want to compare our marginal customer acquisition cost to our customer lifetime value. And that's essentially just the value that a customer at ClassPass brings. And so ideally, you want a 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio, or customer acquisition cost to lifetime value ratio. So what you want to do is compare that to a third of the lifetime value. In this case, by doing these calculations, we realized that despite the lift in reactivations, our marginal acquisition was actually not cost effective relative to our customer lifetime value. And therefore, this particular iteration was not something we could move forward with confidently, but it does offer opportunity to reevaluate and maybe make some tweaks and iterations so that we can get to that 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. And that leads nicely into the third segment of this session, and that is tips for tracking down funnel data. So, so in terms of what tests you want to track down funnel, so we talked about what is down funnel data as well as why it's important to track, but in terms of when you want to track down funnel. So really anything that can start to impact the types of leads or customers or the sales cycle is something where you do want to start to track down funnel because it can have long-term impact on your business. So tests related to lead generation, product merchandising, offers, discounts, trials, customer onboarding flows, as well as customer win-back campaigns are all tests where you do want to consider what kind of long-term impact your optimization could be having on your company. Now, for setting up your next experiment for success, so we've been tracking a lot of our tests because they are cross-functional and they do touch these things. We track them down funnel. And I wanted to share some tips with you guys so you can implement those at your company. So the first is, because a lot of these tests that warrant tracking down funnel are cross-functional and do require a lot of team members across departments to participate, it's important to define your metric of success prior to launch. With down funnel data, it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the different data points you might start noticing a difference in based on your optimization. In addition, by setting the success metric prior to launch, this will actually expedite the experiment readout once you've concluded the test. The next tip is, when you are measuring something down funnel, you want to consider all of the stages that a visitor has to go in order to get to that down funnel data point sample pool. That way you can ensure that you do have enough visitors at the start of the funnel to really start to measure an impact down funnel. And the last tip, this is actually one of my favorite parts of tracking down funnel data, and that is that when you do start to look at the long-term impact, this provides visibility into new levers that you can start to iterate upon for future tests. I kind of hinted at that when we were looking at the table in terms of there's so many different things that we can start to iterate upon to really get to that 3-to-1 LTV to CAC ratio. So if you remember, the cost of the goods went up by 30%. Maybe we could tweak that so that in the future, that LTV to CAC ratio is closer to that 3-to-1 goal. And even the retention rate, we saw that 5% loss. Maybe there's things we could do to get that up so that we can, again, get to that 3-to-1 ratio. If we think back to the first experiment with the referrals and incentivizing our members to spread the word about ClassPass, there were two things that we learned that are ultimately levers that we can utilize in the future. One was that incentives do work, specifically when providing free classes to our members. You could argue it worked too well, that our members went out and actually tried to get anyone who was considering ClassPass to come through their invitation URL. At the same time, we now know that if we ever do have a test where we want to prompt our members to take an action, incentivizing them with these 10 free credits is a definite possibility, and it has proven successful. At the same time, we also learned from that same experiment that there is this risk of channel cannibalization. And so with that, we can actually start to use that to our advantage. If, for instance, we have an acquisition channel that's maybe not as cost-effective as another, we could actually start to manipulate that overlap of channels so that we can use it to our advantage. Now, with that said, I hope the next time that you're evaluating your test data and determining, was it truly a winner, you consider what kind of impact could your optimization be having on your long-term growth and costs, and therefore consider tracking down funnel. I want to thank you for your time today, guys. Again, my name is Nina Bayatti. I'm based in Chelsea, New York, and always happy to meet with fellow optimizers, so feel free to reach out. I'm available on LinkedIn as well as email at nina@classpass.com. Thanks so much.
Great job. Thank you, Nina. All right, so we have time for a few questions. Let's just start off with the top one here. Have you been testing the free for a month or free for 2 weeks offers, and what were the results?
I think this is coming from a fellow ClassPass user, because yes. Yeah, so we've been testing out different durations and basically tracking it down funnel. And so what we've seen in terms of results is it kind of depends on the studio density. So when there's more classes available, people can really take advantage of the trial duration and also the number of credits. And so we've been trying to personalize this a bit more so that anyone who's like a prospective can really get a feel for what's available and has enough time to really understand and be able to try it out for themselves.
So what frameworks do you use to prioritize tests, and how do you estimate the possible impact of the test?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. To be honest, when I first started, I was actually utilizing the Prioritization XL, which is an awesome resource, by the way. If you haven't seen it already, check it out. And from there, it started to get a bit more customized just based on like our company culture and like the needs of our business. So now what we do is, like I mentioned, we have these team-specific roadmaps that are visible for everyone. And basically, the way that we estimate the impacts is really a measure of how much effort is it going to take, where is it running on the website, and also just kind of leveraging any of our web analytics that kind of showcase why we've come up with this hypothesis, as well as any sort of previous tests that we've run. Like anything that can be somewhat similar, we try and utilize so that we can prioritize accordingly.
So what tools do you use to share learnings and insights?
Honestly, Google Docs. Yeah, I mean, we're very much a Google sort of drive company. Yeah, it's just, you know, don't make it complicated. I do also utilize Google Slides to kind of showcase the different variations. I found that to be really helpful for people to understand what exactly we're changing, especially if it's a whole flow. And then also Google Spreadsheets for just really documenting at large, like all the different experiments and why we prioritize them in different ways.
Okay. So of the 150 plus tests that you ran in 2018, what kind of tests were they? Copy, layout, new features, and then how do you handle so many tests live at a given time?
Yeah, so I mean, this is why we created the testing lab. In terms of what types of tests, I mean, it's really everything. So our email marketing team will test everything from the subject line to the creative that's inside of it. Also, like our social media team will test out different creative pieces. In terms of how you know, we kind of handle so many tests, we do have the testing lab where when it becomes a cross-functional test and it starts to touch into different departments or different cohorts, we come together and ensure, you know, is it resourced accordingly? Is it being prioritized correctly? Is there anything else we could do to really ensure that it's set up for success? And then the other thing is, I mean, because we have so many different tests, like it really is important to have that visibility so that anyone else who's running a test somewhat similar can leverage those learnings. I mean, there's no reason to kind of run the same test again in a different channel if we've already found some other learnings that we could be leveraging to make it better.
So how do you track user cohorts from CRO tests all the way through to CLTV? Seems like there would be interaction effects as your product changes.
Definitely. And that is something that we have to keep in mind is, did we update anything in the product that could have impacted the user journey? And again, that's why there is so much cross-team collaboration when it comes to experimentation at ClassPass, is we do leverage both our on-site metrics, so looking at those like page views, bounce rate, et cetera, but then really trying to understand the full story of what happened after the fact and how were they using our product as a result, and are there any sort of patterns that we can find and deduce. But yes, it's really a combination of both qualitative and quantitative when it comes to really tracking down funnel and understanding what kind of long-term impact your optimization could have.
Okay, we'll just do this last question then. With this business model, I feel like you're ultimately judged by the reputation of the experience. So is there anything you do to help improve the class itself?
Yeah, I mean, this is why we have our partnerships team. So they reach out to the studios, and they'll actually help them so that they are providing the best experience possible. I mean, with ClassPass, like, we do have so much visibility into how people are utilizing classes and what they're looking for. And so we do try and help our partners as much as possible so that we're ultimately offering the best experience for our customers. You know, by helping our studios out and making sure that they're providing the most optimal experience, this in turn helps our customers and our members.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Nina.
you. Thanks.